Yo, what's crackalacka people? So, Review Tech USA came out recently and put forward a rather stupid argument, stating that Nintendo have him and the YouTube community to thank for the current success of the Switch and most notably the third parties coming to the system, all because he and many others vocally complained about the Wii U. My answer to that is simply
wrong.
Sometimes I wondered if people even pay attention to what games came out on a system, when they came out on a system, and who supports those systems. But like most things on the internet, people like to cherry pick, especially when Nintendo are involved. I half feel that he's just trolling the Nintendo community, something many people take delight in doing, mostly because the Nintendo community can be a very passionate place, with some people certainly being overzealous, but that can be for all things. But there are also many people who understand Nintendo very well, are very logical, still passionate, but passionate because of facts. To simply say, they're to thank these haters, these Wii U grumblers, to simply say that they're to thank for the third-party situation is both arrogant and ignorant to what has happened in the past and present. And personally, I'm not wasting any more oxygen on these idiots. The only problem is that these views affect thousands, of other people. That's when it becomes an issue. There are great YouTubers out there with the knowledge and facts to easily argue against what Review Tech USA came out with. YouTubers like Mr. T, Terminator Juice, and Terrell the Insane Game Freak, who all made very compelling videos discussing all the points that need addressing, and indeed they address them so please check out the videos. I'll put links in the description for them. So instead of me repeating what others have said, as well as those guys I just mentioned, I'd rather talk about something else, still in relation somewhat to what has been said, but also another story that has come out recently. So reports came out that recently Nintendo are now supposedly actively seeking to have more mature content on their platforms, where also a number of developers supposedly stated that Nintendo in the past have been passive, is the word I use, I believe, passive on such content. My thoughts on this nearly turned this video into a rant, based off the fact that mature content has always been active on Nintendo platforms, and even Nintendo themselves developing and publishing mature content when required. But the more I thought about it, the more holes turned up in every argument. Sure, mature content has always appeared on Nintendo platforms, but at the same time Nintendo has been known, and are still known perhaps, to prevent certain games from appearing on their platforms, although that hasn't happened, nowhere near as much as people like to make out. And as well, Nintendo as well have enforced censors on some software produced for their platforms. This still happens today in some cases, most recent one in memory being Tokyo Mirage Sessions on the Wii U, which was left uncensored in Japan, but had parts censored when the game launched in the US and European territories. Awesome game, by the way, make sure you play it if you can. Then I started debating with myself. Something I do a lot anyway. Probably one of the reasons why I started creating the channel, but anyway, I started wondering what exactly you would classify as mature content, especially coming from Nintendo. And for me, I believe Nintendo has always created what you might consider as mature content, even with some of their most well-known IPs. Is the Zelda series considered immature or designed solely for a younger audience? No, it's not. It's designed for all ages, to have subject matter that can be understood by children on a basic level and looked into deeper by adults. You could easily argue that this is the magic that Nintendo can produce with their IPs, and how they're able to create games that can easily cater to all ages and all player skill levels, to a well enough degree. But taking out difficulty here, I believe mature content stems more from the level of sophistication and adult themed content that is portrayed within the game. I'm not sure about anyone else, but there were times in, say, Ocarina of Time, especially in the Shadow Temple, where the area was very dark and draped in horror compared to what you had experienced previously in the game, and the screams of the Gyarados, especially when you might first hear them as you leave the Temple of Time as Adult Link, you'll send shivers down my spine. Even as a young adult, and still at times to this day, they are terrifying opponents. Look at the story of Majora's Mask, another tragic tale with plenty of undertones like a cursed father forcibly locked in a wardrobe by his child who still looks after him and loves him. Same as Twilight Princess, which deals with madness and obsession.
What the fuck?
And lately you've had Breath of the Wild, which is indeed a sad tale of lost friends, loneliness and pressure on a young mind trying to live up to a cruel fate, amongst other things. As an adult, I personally found the story in Breath of the Wild to be extremely sad. I could go into a number of other Nintendo IPs like F-Zero being a serious and very challenging racer, especially the 3D games. Metroid is probably viewed as Nintendo's most mature series, which deals with loss and isolation as undertones, and hell, people even look at Mario with adult-like scrutiny. Take Peter, for example, who are constantly campaigning against Mario wearing a Tanuki suit, which they deem as animal cruelty.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
Even when something as cartoonish as that, people can't apply mature thought processes to them. People look at the villager in Animal Crossing, for Crom's sake, as, they look at him as a homicidal maniac. Plenty of Smash Bros. Memes portray that. And then you have the undertones of Pokemon, if you look at it with an adult sense of humour. A universe where humans trap wild creatures in small, tight balls and use them to savage each other until rendered unconscious, then resuscitated and thrown back into the fray once again. As adults, we can find what we might consider as mature themes in most things. I could name a wealth of times Nintendo has developed and published mature content on their platforms, and I could also name a number of times where they have stepped in and deemed something not appropriate for their core visions, and have changed things, like where Miyamoto told Rare to change the characters in Jet Force Gemini to be more adult looking to suit the nature of the game better, because Rare initially designed those characters chibi, childlike looking characters. Or for Bayonetta to be a scantily clad and sexy in Link and Samus's suits, as Platinum deemed the character worthy. Speaking of Bayonetta, I suppose you could argue that that's the most recent game where Nintendo have actively pushed for a mature game to appear on their consoles. But you also have Devil's Third as another example, or Project Zero, Maiden of the Black Water, co-developed and published by Nintendo. Or on the flip side, We could mention Nintendo censoring blood from appearing in Mortal Kombat on the SNES, which we all know about, or even distancing themselves from the crude humour of Conker's Bad Fur Day, getting Rare and THQ to publish that game instead. Hell, remember the issues with Nintendo and Body Harvest being developed by DMN Design? That game went through hell. You remember DMA Design, right? They later made a small game called Grand Theft Auto. There are all these moments in time, but what I'd like to address most in this discussion is my little dilemma on whether I feel Nintendo should be either more actively developing themselves what we mostly consider as mature content, or actively chasing third parties to bring mature content to their platforms, or both. In regards to the former, I have my walls up about Nintendo actively producing more content, and in a way I don't want them to. I'm talking about the mature content people would deem as mature content. You have that stupid argument about how Nintendo should grow the maturity of their games along with their fan base, which one side is full of adults now, including myself. But I'm sorry, in my mind they already do. Does anyone seriously want, for example, a violent or thought-provoking Mario game? Or does anyone want Mario games to be harder? I'd like to see how many people fully complete a Mario game. Hell, even Donkey Kong Country games will kick your ass as a core gamer, which reminds me of when people moaned about F-Zero GX, saying it was too hard. I rinsed that game hard on all master modes.
Oh yeah. Congratulations.
But I guess this also goes into the stupid debate about whether all Nintendo games are just for kids, which is obviously
wrong.
Saying that, Nintendo are quite often referred to as the Disney of video games. That one company who can be universal for all. So I said to myself, would I expect or demand that Disney should suddenly start producing horror films, murder mysteries, war films, the type of content that I suppose people would consider as mature? I'd firmly answer no. That is not what Disney is about. It's not what they were built on, and I wouldn't want them to go in that direction. You can, like Nintendo, see many adult themes and tones in Disney movies without them becoming graphic in nature. I look at Nintendo in the same way. I don't want them to feel pressured into producing certain types of adult-themed content. Nintendo are who they are when it comes to the content they make, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to actively chasing third parties, it all depends on the games they are chasing. Another discussion about overrated and trash third-party games for another time perhaps. In the end, I think we can all agree that Nintendo have in many ways actively pushed for certain mature rated games on their platforms. Not all, but many indeed. Doom being an example here. People acting like Doom has been a complete rarity on Nintendo platforms. When in a way they've been a rarity on Sony platforms as well. Doom was on the PlayStation 1, just like Doom was on the SNES and N64. The N64 still having the only unique exclusive version of Doom for that console. That game hasn't been ported anywhere else. But talking about Doom, there was nothing on the PlayStation 2, or the PSP, or the Vita to my knowledge. Until finally Doom 3 appeared on the PlayStation 3. As well as older games. Even though the original Xbox had Doom 3. I mean, the very first Xbox had Doom 3. Hell, Doom appeared on the Game Boy Advance, and now the new Doom has appeared on the PlayStation 4 and is also coming to the Switch. So technically Doom has skipped half of the consoles Sony has made. That doesn't matter anyway. Nintendo has always wanted mature content on their consoles. History shows that in abundance. But I don't want Nintendo themselves to change to appease a certain demographic, which could, essentially change their image and them as a company. Mature games will come to Nintendo platforms. Nintendo will be involved in a select chosen few, will happily remain passive to some, and for me that's worked up until now, and I still wanted to stay like that in a way. So I guess what I'm asking you here is, do you feel Nintendo should change their family image, even if it's a bit, to suit additional player types and create what people class as mature content? Or do you think they should stay the same image-wise as a family-friendly company, continue to develop the type of content they already do, almost like I said, the Disney of video games, and just continue to welcome most but not all third-party mature rated games on their platforms? As always, thanks for listening, and let me know your thoughts below. Peace.